you had, I think, countries around the world in terms of wealth and energy consumption or something like, I think it was wealth and energy consumption. And what you could see is that, I mean, and the title was, there is no developed economy that is low energy consumption. And it was true. I mean, like, all the developed countries were consuming a lot of energy. All the underdeveloped countries were the most low consumption of energy. And then, I mean, I advance you. I mean, there is a book that is absolutely beautiful by a very interesting guy who has written about all these things, called Václav Smil, who is apparently one of the favorite authors from Bill Gates. Bill Gates is talking all the time about Václav Smil. It's really incredible. He has a book that is called History of Energy, which I will recommend you on Wednesday, but I'd recommend you now also, which is incredible. It's about basically how people have been generating and using energy, and he says his hypothesis is the same. It's basically higher human development requires more energy consumption. I mean, historically, it has been like that until now. He says now things are changing because of that conflict between energy production and pollution and environmental damage. Can we imagine technologies that in the future will produce an enormous amount of energy at a very cheap price and without environmental pollution? Maybe. I mean, I don't think that nuclear energy is that, because nuclear energy produces waste that is toxic and lasts forever, and you have to keep it like, it may be a short-term solution, but I don't, I mean, I mean, this is why I talk about the four elements. I think there is something arcane about what I am saying, that there are certain things that no matter how much we develop technologically, finally to rely on the natural cycles is better. It's better to produce food, it's better to do anything. I mean, like, if we were able to smoothly integrate cities in nature, that will be the best solution. And I mean, that coincides with maybe arcane Asian thinking, no? This idea of harmony with nature, which is not so common in the West. I mean, in that sense, it's kind of going back to these ideas of harmony with nature. Western people don't value nature as much as Asian people, historically, and I think that it's some sort of kind of very deep truth in that, but I may be too conservative. There was something else that I wanted to mention about this question about no developed economies without high energy consumption. Sorry, I lost it. I don't remember. If I remember, I'll talk about it. I mean, what do you think about that?
I'm not sure, because I was just thinking that maybe like we could interesting to see that a building, it could like self-support everything and not have to do anything else with the outside. But it's just kind of like a playful thought, I think.
I think it was a great idea. In the 1950s, I would have bought it immediately. Energy is cheap. You can drive a huge car and consume whatever amount of gasoline you want. You can build highways made out of asphalt, which is toxic like hell. Everywhere, it was great. You can use plastics. You can. Nobody was aware of, or let's say maybe people became aware in the 70s, or became more aware we've seen today, they were aware in the 20s, and even at the end of the 19th century, some people realized that industrialization was creating environmental problems. That's the beginning of all this thinking. But I lost I lost the thought. What was your question? What was your proposal? That it was a kind of interesting. Yes, was an interesting idea. I would have definitely bought it, given the technology that existed at the time. But again, how much can we rely on technology? I got what I wanted to say before. That there are people talking about this issue of energy. One of the big discussions now on a political level are the questions about growth versus degrowth. There are some very serious economists who are saying the Earth cannot sustain a population like the human population that we have now. It needs to. We need to be fewer people, because otherwise we are going to spoil the planet. And so there are very serious people who are saying we cannot keep this kind of capitalist idea that we need to keep growing, and we need to keep growing because obviously there is a kind of limit of the resources of the planet, and it doesn't support. And there are people like Elon Musk who are saying this is bullshit, and we will invent the technology to sustain more people with this planet, and there are other people who are saying the opposite. I don't know what the solution is, but the problem of energy has also something to do with the amount of population, of human population, as kind of resource consumption. It's not only energy; it's food. Food is also related to. This is for the last session, for the fourth session. So I'm kind of, but maybe I make you curious about it. Do you know that nearly half of the human population is physically artificial? Like half of the people that are here would not exist if we didn't have a technology that is the synthesis of ammonia, which was invented in 1906, so early 20th century. By the guy who, what was the name of the guy? Nobel Prize in chemistry, was the guy who designed the first gas attack that I was mentioning, that Sloterdijk says is the beginning of the modern era. I'll give you the name on Thursday, but so there's this kind of scientist who is a Nobel Prize, who was working on chlorine, actually cleaning the the water in cities using chlorine. And he is the guy who developed the technology for what is called the synthesis of ammonia. Ammonia is basically nitrogen. So in order to grow vegetables, you need a number of things, and one of them is ammonia, nitrogen. But ammonia is fixated nitrogen. So nitrogen is very common in the atmosphere, but it's kind of gas. So you need to basically make it into matter, and that is what is a fertilizer. So the fertilizers are invented by Faber-Bosch. Faber-Bosch is the system. Is the first synthesis of ammonia that was developed out of this discovery. And so Václav Smil, the same guy who talks about energy, talks about this issue of the synthesis of ammonia, and he says that the synthesis of ammonia is the most important, the most influential scientific discovery in the history of mankind. Much more important than computers, much more important than industrialization, much more important than anything. Why? Because it has enabled the food production to support a global population. So it has increased the amount of humans by an enormous amount. And so synthesis of ammonia is very bad for many other reasons, because it depletes the soil, it produces eutrophication, it removes the oxygen from the water of the sea. I mean, it produces potentially catastrophic effects also. So can we do without ammonia, without synthetic ammonia? We cannot. I mean, if we suddenly stop or forbid the production of ammonia, we'll have to kill, or we will kill, half of the population in the world. So all these issues, I think. I mean, I think they are related to thinking about cities and to designing cities. The kind of water cycles, or the nitrogen cycles, the carbon cycles, all these cycles, which are natural, have to be integrated into urban cycles. What has happened in the modern period is that the artificial processes have become completely divorced from natural processes. And that has allowed us to have more energy, to have more food, to have a number of other things. And so there are many people who are saying, this cannot go on, we need to degrow, we need to stop growing. In fact, we need to reduce the population slowly, because the planet is not going to sustain that. And there are optimists that say, no, we'll use nuclear energy for a while, and then we'll invent a technology that will allow us to have free energy forever. I mean, that's basically Elon Musk theory. Is he right? I mean, these days I am declaring myself a conservative. Maybe also because these kind of things, I think, are much more interesting for architects than the bubble model. I mean, maybe I'm selfish about the bubble model. I think the problem of the bubble model is that that it turns everything into the same. No, I mean, if you can have free energy, then we can have any type of building anywhere, because we can basically sustain any environment in any building. We just have a kind of sealed envelope and a machine that filters the air, brings it in, heats it or cools it, and you can live in the North Pole in a glass box, having free energy. But isn't that limiting for architects? I mean, isn't it more interesting to try to see, okay, so if we are in Hong Kong, we have the problem with humidity and heat and blah blah blah, and if we are in Seoul, we have a very cold winter and a very hot summer, and if we are in Dubai, maybe we should not live in Dubai at all. That's another possibility. I mean, it's like, why would you build a huge city in such climate when you know that the only way in which you can sustain that population in that climate is out of energy and energy and energy, and importing all the food because you cannot grow anything? I mean, they are trying to develop technologies to grow things, but I don't know. Better to move to Medellin, where there is no need for any air conditioning whatsoever. You can almost like live outside all year. I mean, there are kind of very, very important questions, very serious questions. I think that we will discuss this. We'll come back to these issues, especially on the kind of first sessions of the urban ecology. We'll come back to these same questions eventually about growth, degrowth, energy, density of population, because I think we need to think about them. More questions. I mean, I know that also maybe your English, you are kind of shy because maybe your English is, you are, I mean, I understand that also. So it's, I don't, yeah.
How do you think about biodiversity?
Sorry.
Let's say in a planetary scale? Planetary scale.
In a planetary scale. Yeah. Very important concept.
Said building is not a bubble, and I think so as a city, there should be always extra urban area with the air. So if you approach the design in a local scale, in a microclimate, and if you enhance the airflow, but the air is like the particles and the molecules, they will move somewhere in the same climate. So it is still in the same volume.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the problem of the yellow dust, no? You get the pollution from China here. So you can be very careful with the local environment, but if you don't think on a planetary scale, I am a globalist. Still, there are many people who are thinking in being again localists. I think that to think on a planetary scale is absolutely necessary and is impossible. I mean, you cannot convince the Korean citizens or the British citizens to apply stringent climate control mechanisms when maybe the US and China are not complying with them, because then you are asking a generation to sacrifice themselves when the kind of global warming is going to be more or less the same because there are these guys who are consuming a lot of energy and producing a lot of carbon. So I think that this the same way I said the agency for architects, the most effective agency for architects is going to be local. That cannot happen without a global policy. So these policies that I was in some ways not really criticizing, but saying, okay, you can decide on global levels of nitrogen content in the atmosphere or fine particulate, but there is not going to be direct effect on the local. Is not true. There will be. I mean, if you were able to say, when I show this chart where you have all the parameters of air quality in the EU, Canada, US, China, whatever, can we not agree that on a global scale, like everybody the same, instead of, Americans are allowing themselves to pollute. I mean, they are polluting their own country, but they are eventually also polluting somebody else. So China is allowing certain standards that maybe Germany is not allowing. So the Germans are saying, well, why not? Why should I sacrifice my living standard if the effect that the carbon emissions from Germany is going to be minor compared to China? So there needs to be. I strongly believe that global policies are very important, and to think on the planetary scale is very important. But that is a scale that in some ways is going to be, for architects, is going to be very difficult to get into it. I mean, you can probably feel, maybe you feel cheated because I'm not talking about architecture enough. I'm talking about all kinds of things, but not architecture. but there are certain things that I think we can use in our discipline, and there are certain things that we have to vote as citizens of the world. And we need to make decisions on a kind of planetary scale. I don't think that the solution to the problems of globalization is kind of total localization, because we cannot go back. We are, whether we like it or not, our economies are connected, things are happening. Processes are happening on a global level, so we can no longer, be isolationists. Make America great, or this kind of politics of kind of looking like this and saying no, I am in. Well, you can do whatever you want in Korea, but you're gonna still get the yellow dust unless there is some sort of larger agreement.